Minasan konnichiwa o genki desu ka? For those of you who don't know, that is, hey, good afternoon, and are you healthy and happy? I hope this video finds you healthy and happy. And today we are going to talk about what you should do with your side hustle money. That's a question that comes up. So now you're making this extra money with your side hustle. What should we do? So today I brought with me Paris Cluff. He is a financial advisor and knows a lot about things you should and shouldn't do with your money. Paris, welcome.
Thanks, Bart. It's glad to be with you. It's fun to be on your show. You were on mine the other day and a couple weeks ago or whatever, and now I'm on yours. It's fun to reciprocate like that, and I'm excited to share some good thoughts and ideas about what people should do with their
Well,
side hustle money because that's a very important thing.
I think what we do fits. I teach
Mhm.
people how to make money, you teach people how to keep money.
Yep, yep, absolutely.
Okay, so the question is out there that came in was, what do I do with my side hustle money? And we both know that whenever you get extra money, a lot of us just want to spend it. I know I have a tendency to do that, and
Mhm.
that's probably not the best idea.
Yeah, lifestyle creep is real, and whether it's a raise. And this, what I'm about to share, is pertinent to if you receive a chunk of money from anything, just if it's a side hustle, if it's a raise, if it's a bonus, anytime you get any money that's above and beyond what you're normally, your salary, your commission, whatever it is, I suggest that you have a formula. And this is maybe a formula that you can come up with yourself. But one of the formulas I come up with is first, you want to put aside money for taxes, especially any money that doesn't come through a payroll department. Payroll is already, if you have a job, a W-2, a W-4 job, 10 where you're a 9 to 5, you're going to have payroll do almost all of your taxes. They're going to do all those things. I would definitely adjust your W-4, make sure that's completely dialed in because you want to make sure that you're getting as much money as possible from your 9 to 5. And then any money on top of that, you want to set aside some cash for taxes. I personally had interactions and experiences with the IRS, and I highly recommend you stay off of their radar. I also have met with a lot of people. In fact, my CPA this year, he and I are good friends as well. So he was telling me, he said, Paris, this is how much you owe for taxes. And I said, that's fine. I have it in my savings. I'm so grateful for how you manage your money. He says, I literally just got off the phone with a guy who I told him he owed like 30 or $40,000 and he didn't put any of it away. And now he's got a huge problem with the IRS. And that is one of the biggest concerns that I have with side hustle money is that you
Yeah.
start making $1,000 a month, or maybe you're making 1,500 a month, and you feel like that's all yours. And you know what? Morally and ethically, maybe it should be, but legally, it's not all yours. And some of that has to go to Uncle Sam. Now, I highly recommend you get with a really good CPA because if you have a side hustle, you can write off a lot of things. So definitely make sure that you know all the write-offs that you have because you can really reduce your taxable income by quite a bit.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I would highly recommend at least 25% because what a lot of people don't realize is that when you have a side hustle, there's another tax that gets added in that most people don't know about, and that's called self-employment tax.
Yep.
And that's something that you don't have to pay when you're an employee, but you do have to pay it when you're self-employed or 1099 or side hustle. So there's actually a little bit higher tax bracket than you might be normally thinking you're in. So if you, with your employee W-2 income, maybe you're in a 20 to 25% tax bracket, that's still going to be your tax bracket, but now you got to add on top of that some self-employment stuff. So my recommendation, especially for people, depending on what state you live in, because there's different states that have different taxes as well, I would definitely put aside minimum 30% of any. So if you make $100, take 30 and put it in a bank account just for savings, just for taxes, sorry. Then I would say the other 70% or the other $70 of that 100, I would highly recommend that you split that up into different things that you might need. What I would do is I don't have any consumer debt, but what I would do is I would set aside some money for my wife has a couple medical bills that we're paying off we have a zero interest, so I don't pay interest because if I'm going to put anything on a payment plan, it's got to be zero interest or I just pay it off. Like I don't pay interest, but what I would do is add a little bit, maybe 10, 15, 20% towards debt. And then I would have another 10, 15, 20% towards savings. And then whatever's left over, I would say reinvest back into your business or spend it. But you definitely, whenever you get extra money, like my wife and I, whenever we get extra money, it's taxes, savings, a little bit of towards some of those medical bills, and then we split the rest of it in two, and I get to spend however I want, and then the other half she gets to spend however she wants. But because we have allocated for savings, we've allocated for the taxes, and we've allocated towards some of our obligations, the rest of the money really is extra, and that is what we spend. And so we have it guilt-free, stress-free. That's our money to just go blow it and have fun and just do whatever we want. And that's a huge relief for a lot of people to have money like that.
Yeah. And being self-employed, I've been in self-employed since I started business really. And my first side hustle was as a kid as a disc jockey. I can't remember if I paid taxes or not
Hmm.
because I was just a kid, but I was making good money on the
Yeah.
weekends, $500-600 a weekend as a teenage kid was pretty nice for 4 hours of work. But
Hmm.
once I got to working age to where I had to pay attention, oh, that self-employment tax, that doubles your tax rate.
Yeah, I
That
can.
doubles your taxes. And paying attention to that. And I pay quarterly now, but I've always wanted to have to pay at the end. I don't want a refund
Exactly.
because I don't want to lend my money for free to the government.
Yeah, and I save in a high yield savings account. So all my tax money is in a high yield savings account. I save it for 3 months. I earn a little interest. And unfortunately, that's taxed too, but I earn a little interest while it's waiting for my quarterly to payment.
Yeah.
At least I'm trying to put a little bit of that money to work for me and have a little bit of interest. In fact, this last year when my tax guy called me and I paid my taxes, I had a few $100s left over, and it was from the interest. And so it's like, hey, that's kind of cool to have a head start towards the next quarter because
Yeah.
I let my money go to work for me. And I don't suggest at all that you put tax money into the market. Put it into a high yield savings account, FDIC
Yeah.
insured, not going anywhere. Even if you have to put it in the backyard, put it in your safe. Like the IRS money, you don't want to mess around with that. So that's
Yeah,
what I recommend.
exactly. And then also as a business person, you never know what's going to happen. I preach about what happens when what happens happens and things happen. Business,
Yep.
I remember so my export business with my exports to Japan in 2004, 2005 had really good years. And then 2006, I figured out I was going to be living on about half the income I've had for the past 2 years because of different things. I think the yen dollar went up, and so it was my people buying my dollar. Anyway, it was just a bad year. And
Hmm.
so having an emergency fund, if you don't have one as a family, you need one.
Yeah.
And that could be in the portion that you call your savings, but I
Hmm.
don't feel comfortable living if I don't have 40, 50 grand in an emergency fund for whatever might happen.
Yeah. You have to have some money set aside, especially for anything that can come up. And so maybe your extra money, maybe the side hustle money is what builds your emergency fund because you don't have any leeway or any positive cash flow in your 9 to 5. So if that's the case, so it really kind of depends on where you are in your financial journey as to what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do. If you have a bunch of debt and you don't have any savings, build your savings first. My recommendation is get an emergency fund of at least 1 month first before you really tackle the debt, and then really work on that emergency fund towards 2 months and 3 months. And I have a program, a strategy for building an emergency fund that's more bite-sized. It's easier when you say let's say your bills are 5 grand a month, and I tell you you got to have 3 to 6 months. That's 15 to 30 grand.
Yeah.
And somebody who's just starting out, that can be completely overwhelming to them. So
Yes.
instead of overwhelming you, let's start with step one and just do that. And that is basically get 1 month worth of fixed expenses. And then once you have 1 month of fixed expenses, get 1 month of variable expenses. And now you have your 1 month. And now do that for the second month. Fixed expenses first, variable expenses second. Then the third month, fixed expenses first, variable expenses second. And once you do that, then you're like, wait a minute, before you know it, you got 10 grand in the bank. And you're like, wow, This is great. That confidence in the builds. And maybe after you set aside money for taxes, maybe all of your side hustle money goes towards that in the beginning. And then once you have a nice nest egg or a nice, what I call a safety net, then you can start really taking all that extra money and pounding down your debt if you have some. Most Americans, unfortunately, do have a ton of debt. So let's work on that next for
Yeah.
sure. And then let's start really saving and building wealth after that, and growing your net. What a lot of people don't realize is that growing your net worth is not just paying down debt, it's also building assets. So I
Yeah.
recommend a manageable debt payment program and then building assets as well. So there's a lot of nuance. That's a generic kind of macro level, but individually, we might focus on debt because if you have a lot that's in the wrong places with huge interest rates, then yeah, you really need to focus on that. But generally speaking, if you got a manageable debt, and you can build wealth too at the same time. Side hustle money, you should have a plan for it, and it should be personal to you. Like I can give you great advice on what I would do, but I don't know your personal scenario. But whatever you do, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, you have to set aside money for taxes. And that's the first thing. So take 30, 40% right off the top. The other 60%, that's going to be up to you to determine what you're going to do. And some of the ideas are savings, emergency funds, getting out of debt, putting money, reinvesting money back into the business to help you grow it even more, and then just having a few bucks for some fun, having some fun. There's some
We
other
can't
things
forget
probably in there, but those are the things I'd recommend.
can't forget about having a little fun. You need to reward yourself
Hmm.
for what you're doing, but don't go crazy with it.
Exactly.
All right, Paris, thank you. How can people contact you and get a hold of you and work with you if they are so inclined?
Well, if you need help with, I actually have a free ebook. It's called, you go to pariscluff.com/free book. And it talks a lot about what I just talked about. And it talks about, how to really maximize your employee situation. And then there's a section in there. If you upgrade, the actual ebook doesn't have the section on the entrepreneurialism. If you upgrade to my course, that has a whole section and a workbook about the Schedule C and knowing how to really do that as a side hustle if you're going to really do that. So that's an upgrade, but that's where you go to learn more, and you can reach out to me, download that ebook, and we'll be in touch. So it's pariscluff.com/free book.
Awesome. Thanks, Paris, again for coming on my show. And everybody, this is the Side Hustle Samurai, where we help you identify your ideal side hustle so that you can create the financial security, so that you have the resources for when whatever happens, because it will happen. It's not
Yes.
when, or it's not if, it is when it'll happen.
Yep.
So let's get prepared. All right, we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.